Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Express. I'm Neena Gopal. This is where we take a close look at events in our neighborhood and its impact on India. Today, all eyes are on the four shocking back-to-back terror attacks that were unleashed this week. Not in the Kashmir Valley, but in Jammu, in Reasi, and twice in Doda. The terror has a new address. The first attack took place as Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his cabinet were being sworn in for their third term. Hours after Pakistan's sitting Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and then his brother and former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif had sent a straight from the heart congratulatory message, a plea to replace hate with hope to Mr. Modi, even though they were the only South Asian leaders who did not get an invite to the swearing in. It also coincided with the fact that parliamentary polls were held in Jammu and Kashmir for the first time after the abrogation of Article 370, and where people turned out in huge numbers to vote in Baramulla and Uri, using the vote, not stones, not bombs, to protest the revocation of Article 370 and 35A. So as much as the shift from Kashmir to Jammu is interesting, so is the fact that the infiltration uptick ends the ceasefire that has held since 2021 on the line of control. Is this a message to India that the 4-year-long ceasefire is at an end? Or is the message to Nawaz Sharif, no longer the powerhouse that he once was, given Imran Khan's continuing popularity? Is this also another classic civilian misread of the Pakistan Army's mindset? An army that is led by General Asim Munir, who, like President General Pervez Musharraf, was handpicked by Nawaz. I don't know whether our viewers know this, but that Asim Munir was arbitrarily sacked as the ISI chief by former Prime Minister Imran Khan and replaced by his mentor, General Faiz Hamid. So the four big questions that we're putting out today: one, why the attacks in Jammu and not Kashmir? Is this the end of the ceasefire? What is the message being sent out to India and internally to Pakistan? Is a fourth war closer than our leaders believe is possible? And will India retaliate in any form? Or talking to us today are Dr. Radha Kumar. She's a historian, an author, and policy analyst who writes extensively on foreign policy, particularly the prospects of peace with Pakistan. She was appointed by former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh to work with Sati Lamba on a settlement with Pakistan. Many say it was one of the first workable settlements there was. Dr. Kumar's book, Paradise at War, is a fabulous inside track on what we have to understand about what makes Kashmir tick. She has a new book, The Republic Relearned, which we must get our hands on. Welcome, Dr. Kumar. Also with us is Mr. Avinash Mohanani, former Intelligence Bureau Chief who spent considerable time in Pakistan on security assignments and is renowned for his meetings with the Jaish-e-Mohammed and Harkatul Mujahideen founder, Mohammed Masood Azhar, when he was in jail. Masood Azhar is one who gave Mr. Mohanani the lowdown on how these terror groups actually function in Pakistan and Kashmir. He writes extensively on developments in the region and is on a first-name basis, I hear, with a bunch of separatists who straddle both sides of the divide. Welcome, Mr. Mohanani.
Thank you. Thank you, Neena.
So my first question is to both of you. What triggered the Jammu infiltration? Is it because Kashmir is better monitored by the forces? Has Jammu become a blind spot? I mean, the 4-year ceasefire and the peace in the valley, in the Kashmir Valley, has seen a rise in tourism to the border towns like Uri, with the command post crossing, which was called Aman Setu, the Peace Bridge, when Prime Minister Vajpayee opened up the border crossings in 2005, becoming a place where there's a cafe and eateries and benefiting the families that live in that area hugely. So, did we take Jammu for granted? Was it a blind spot? Can you come in first, Dr. Kumar, and then Avinash?
Yes, thank you, Neena. First of all, I just need to make one clarification. Dr. Manmohan Singh did not appoint me to work with Sati Lamba. He appointed me as one of the 3 interlocutors for Jammu and Kashmir. But I had
I stand
worked on
corrected.
the framework for settlement of the Kashmir issue from 2004 onwards, and had worked with R.K. Mishra slightly, again, on what could be the agenda for India-Pakistan talks. And then, of course, obviously, Sati and I knew each other and we exchanged ideas quite often. But that's about it. On the Jammu thing, it's been brewing actually for quite a long time. I mean, if you recall, there have been several attacks in Poonch Rajouri from, if I'm not wrong, 2022 onwards. And we had flagged it actually in our human rights report on Jammu and Kashmir last year, that Poonch Rajouri were becoming a new locus of militancy. And Pakistani sponsored cross-border as well as local. And we had speculated on some of the reasons for it. But the interesting question is that since it has been building and growing in Poonch and Rajouri for over a year, why is it that no one predicted or forecast that it was likely to spread? And what were the remedial measures that were taken to ensure that there would be no spread? That seems to be a little unclear at the moment. But we do know, of course, that the Jammu Kashmir police, as well as the Rashtriya Rifles and the Army Northern Command, have been looking at what were the holes in the grid. One of the big problems was that with the China border issues flaring up, quite a
So
few.
before we get to China, Dr. Kumar, I'd just like to bring in Avinash Bhonane and ask a very direct question. Was it General Asim Munir who's taken charge as Army Chief in November 2022? Is he the one authorizing these jihadist operations leading up to the tragic Reasi killing?
Absolutely.
Can we put the blame at his door?
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, there has been a tendency in the Indian security establishment to blame inter-services intelligence or ISI for the violence. The ISI is totally a disciplined organization, works under the army chief. So without authorization of the army chief, nothing moves there. So if the blame lies at somebody's doorsteps, it is army chief, Pakistan army chief, Asim Munir. You can't blame it on anybody else as of now. How much Shehbaz Sharif knew it? There could be always a question mark on that. Or has he outsourced everything on India to army chief? That's also a possibility because he's almost at the mercy of the army chief. He continues as prime minister as long as the army chief wants him to continue. So
That's right.
Yeah, and about the Jammu region, look, Jammu region was not a favored destination, particularly the districts of Kathua, Jammu. They were not a favored destination by the Pakistani terror groups because the problem
Why
is
was that?
Because the problem is that once they cross the border, the population is a Hindu population. There are no hills.
Yes.
So they will be easily spotted and killed. And this is what happened in Hiranagar. The moment they crossed, they fired at they wanted water. The army got alarmed, and within few hours, both of them were killed. But
That's right.
those in the Reasi, because those are the hilly areas. Reasi comes after you cross over from Rajouri. And those are hilly areas where there is forest cover also. Then there are, and now the maize also would be up. So it's easy to hide there. And the way is to cross over from Reasi to Doda, and from Doda you can easily go to the Anantnag district. Just cross the hill and you are in Anantnag district of Valley. So these are my point. My thinking is there were at least 3 groups of terrorists who infiltrated recently. One
I
of
see.
one of course was neutralized the moment it entered in Hiranagar. The 2 others attacked the bus in Reasi and then moved to Gundo and upper areas. So they have not been caught, they have not been spotted, and maybe they are there in the Doda district, or maybe they crossed over to Valley. Nobody knows, because it's not that difficult to cross over to the Valley. So Hiranagar perhaps was a wrong decision on the part of terror groups. They have been avoiding these areas where they can be easily spotted and killed.
Apparently, they've also been spotted in Jammu itself. And
Yeah.
that's quite unnerving that they could be, in a city like Jammu, which is full of Hindus, and really, you would stand
Yes.
out.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
if I could just come back to you, Dr. Kumar, Nawaz's first message to Modi, uh, very as expected, blamed this unnamed President General Musharraf for scuppering the Lahore peace process with Kargil in 1999. But his second message, which called for hope to replace hate, and another lovely phrase which I forget, was actually followed by a real spike in terror attacks. Uh, so was this a message to Nawaz Sharif as much as to India? Because I hear that General Asim Muni's entire focus is on putting the Pakistan economy back on track, and hence his recent visit to Beijing, where he accompanied Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and is supposed to have been photographed wearing civis. But they've come back without the investments that Islamabad was hoping to get from Beijing, which is basically concerned, I suppose, over the safety of their Chinese personnel working on the Belt and Road. And the other little twist I had was that the China-Pakistan economic corridor was Nawaz's big success, triumph, whatever you may call it. Do you think that that this was a message to Nawaz saying that we are not going to pursue a peace track with India as long as we have China backing us?
Well, I think that if you look at the history of attempted peace processes between India and Pakistan, or the history of talks, you will see that in almost every case, there's a spike in terrorist attacks. And that's a message clearly both from the terrorist groups in Punjab as well as from the army/ISI, that they need to be in a position of some kind of power when it comes to any peace talks. Some people would say that they're sending a message saying we'll call the shots. Others might argue that they're sending a message saying we'll limit the scope of how far you can go on peace talks. And we've always had this problem of, do you begin with small CBMs, or do you tackle the big ticket issues, which are the most difficult to resolve? The thing that always surprises me is how we always seem to go back and begin from zero. It's not as if we're building on what was achieved in a previous phase. And that's why, in a sense, we end up, well, I shouldn't say we, I should say that the people who perhaps want to move forward end up being pushed and limited by the groups that support violence. And that's a very sad thing. We need to begin to say that, look, this was achieved in so-and-so year. We need now to move forward from that and see what is the next step that we have to go to.
So, Mr. Mahanani, how did
Nawaz Sharif,
sorry, yeah. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
no, on Nawaz, On Nawaz Sharif, I just wanted to point out that he belongs to what I would call a much wider network of Pakistani politicians who wish to uh, keep their extremely strong relationship with China going, while at the same time engaging with India. And of course, trade has always been very close to his heart, especially sugar, in which his own family is involved. So those elements appear to remain from his previous stints as well. And in that sense, I would say that you do have a lot of ground from earlier talks with Nawaz Sharif that you could build on if you wish to.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because I think a lot of people invested on the Wagah-Atari border in Pakistan when they were when they felt that the borders would be open. And I do know that the tomatoes from Punjab, when they were exported through the Wagah-Atari border to Pakistan, Punjab, were very appreciated because they were perfect tomatoes. They'd never seen anything like it. That's what they tell me, but I don't know. But
I'd also add
secondly,
just one point quickly, Nina. I'd add to
so
that Nawaz Sharif was the first prime minister, to my recollection, Mr. Mohanane may put me right, from Pakistan, who understood that terrorist attacks would have to stop if progress were to be made in terms of whether trade or whether resolving the Kashmir issue.
you actually
And
froze when
that's
you
very
said terrorist
important.
attacks. What did you say? Terrorist attacks could
No, he was the first prime
derail?
minister to understand and recognize and acknowledge that terrorist attacks would have to stop if progress were to be
Yes,
made on trade and on resolving Kashmir.
right, right. Well said. Mr. Monani, could you talk us through this ceasefire 2021? How did it happen? Because bringing peace back to Kashmir, bringing down infiltration as a great achievement. I mean, how did that back channel come about? Because I read stories saying that the Pakistani army chief, then army chief Kamaran Javed Bajwa, did have a sort of back channel conversation with the Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, who's just been re-appointed for his third term. And they're said to have engineered the secret meeting in London in 2018 between an ISI officer, Isfandiar Ali Khan Patodi, and an RAMW operative, Kumar, because the tit-for-tat killings in Kashmir were spiraling out of control. Would you tell us a little bit about that? Because, I mean, Pulwama happened after that, and I think that's when they got serious.
Look, the peace dividends that we had in Kashmir began around 2004 after Vajpayee meeting Musharraf in Pakistan. On January 6th, the joint statement was issued. And
That's right.
I credit President Musharraf, former president, now is no more, former President Musharraf for controlling these terror groups from sending their terrorists to India. That is where the peace dividend came. And second thing, he allowed us to construct the fence. Earlier, the Pakistanis would shell every bit of it and would not let us even construct the fence. The fencing also became possible only because of President Musharraf. He was there. So thereafter, the policies have changed, sometimes this way, sometimes that way, because soon after his departure, the feeling in the army was that he conceded too much to India and India refused to talk even on Kashmir.
I see. I see. That's
So,
very interesting.
so Ashraf Kiani, when he took over as army chief, we had Mumbai attacks. That time he was the army chief. Musharraf was neither army chief nor president of Pakistan. So, with change in the guard, in the army, it went up, down, up, down, up, down. This is the kind of situation we have witnessed. I
But
agree.
one question, if I can just interject, is are you saying that General Kayani uh, allowed the Bombay thing to happen because he was upset with
Yes. Look,
so he not allowed that he actually made it happen.
yeah, absolutely. There is no doubt about it. Look, the problem is that there is a general feeling in Pakistan army and its apparatus and the corps commanders, etc., that India will talk only when you indulge in violence. The violence is the only way that you make India talk on Kashmir. Otherwise,
I see.
India is unlikely to talk on Kashmir. From Indian point of view, there is no Kashmir issue. The only Kashmir issue that we say is that how we take back Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Whereas
Yeah.
Pakistan's point of view, it's a disputed territory. So what Pakistan believes is that till you indulge in violence, India doesn't listen.
So
So
what does Pakistan want right now with this spike in violence? What exactly are they expecting us to do?
the first thing and foremost thing, they would ask India to recognize that there is a Kashmir issue and talk to us. If we refuse to talk to them, and if we firmly say no to them, then it's not that this trend is going to continue. The violence may go up and down. Suddenly we see, you saw the violence when Bilawal Bhutto visited
Yeah,
India.
Goa. Yeah,
He was in Goa, and then their violence was up in Poonch and Rajouri, those areas.
that's
So
true.
but then it became quiet. So it's a calibrated conflict that we are witnessing for last more than 30 years now. It's a calibrated conflict, and the up and downs are part of that calibrated conflict. Now, these boys who have been infiltrated might have indulged in some violence. They will move on, and they will disappear in the hills in J&K till they are gunned down or they die in some encounter or they are detected and they are killed. But that
In
doesn't.
fact, in
Yeah.
fact, we've discovered. Dr. Kumar was also mentioning this earlier that they come extremely well equipped.
uh,
And
yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
they're not rookies.
They could be rookies, but they may be coming for the first time. They are trained, but they are not given not very well trained, because Pakistan is unlikely to create a force that is very well trained, because these people are not a regular army. Tomorrow they can shift to some other group. They can shift to Al Qaeda. They can shift to TTP. They can shift to ISKP. So they have the basic knowledge of the weapon operating system and the basic minimum weight that they can carry. They can't carry 10 rifles with them. They carry only one rifle,
That's
some
true.
grenade, some pistol or some ammunition. This is all they carry. That's a kind of a personal kit that every terrorist carries from there.
So if I
So
can come to you, Dr. Kumar, can we then expect another reach out? Because if Mr. Mohanani is saying that it's like a prod and a poke to get India to react, will India react? I mean, how do you expect India to react? I mean, you've been on the inside track. You've seen how cautious India is, and especially after 26/11, we were extremely careful about. But then when we went with Balakot, we went over the top. So can Modi afford to retaliate, or do you think he'd take the a kind of a softer line? I mean, his government doesn't have the brute majority that it had in the past. So there is also talk I hear in Islamabad that Shehbaz Sharif is on a sticky wicket. He's not as much of a favorite as he was with the army because the economy is slipping. So, what do you think?
Well, look, I mean, I'm not an expert on Pakistan, but the general impression I'm sure that everyone has is that It's in its worst political and economic crisis for a very, very, very long time.
I mean,
And
not
this is,
Pakistan. I'm saying how would India react? How
yeah,
do you
no,
think
so
India would
I
react?
mean, obviously, any Indian government is going to factor that in. It used to be an Indian refrain that, well, who can we rely on? Even when it seemed that there was a relatively stable government in place in Pakistan, there was still that sense that, well, if the army's calling the shots, then, how much, if anything, can the civilian government do? But we must bear in mind that there were periods of time, and here I would actually diverge from what Mr. Mohanane was saying. There have been long periods of time in which both the political and, to some extent, the military leadership have converged on the idea that some type of peace with India is required if Pakistan is to stabilize. Now, whether that type of an understanding is emerging now today in Pakistan, I think it's a little early to say. I would say that as far as the spike in terror attacks is concerned, let me repeat what I said before. These are warning shots, so to speak, and they're disgraceful. They're disgraceful in terms of the loss of human life and the cynicism towards the loss of human life that is displayed by the backers of these terrorists. Having said that, we must remember, though, that there can be talks after that, and that our history with Pakistan has shown that whenever there are talks, the levels of violence decrease very substantially. And that's something never to forget, I would say. And now, I mean, I cannot speak for what the current administration will do. They have long had a position that they will not talk to Pakistan. The only talks that we have seen have been perhaps very quiet back channel talks involving our NSA. We have not seen any form of formal dialogue. So I would be surprised if that were to be an outcome, but I would welcome it as well.
Yeah, I mean that's very interesting. I mean the fact that when Mr. Malani, when you brought up Musharraf, the fact that he was as so anti Lahore, and then turned into and he himself was, I think, sort of given a side swipe by in Agra. I don't think he expected us to be so determined to bring in this phrase cross-border terrorism in the Agra Declaration. I remember him sitting in the car, and I was talking to his aide who was fuming, saying, "Why are they doing this to us?" But the post-Vajpayee era, and Dr. Manmohan Singh's time, there was very serious moves to sort of, to have a reach out. And even in Modi's case, I mean, Ajit Doval, and his sort of connection to Bajwa sent out very good signals. I mean, you had Kartarpur opening up, and there was talk of a free trade agreement. There was talk of that kind of thing. But then during the election campaign, when Modi said, "Hum ghar mein ghus ke kar marte hain," and was that one of the triggers you think that could have upset the Pakistan army? Or I mean,
Yeah,
shouldn't they have expected it during an election?
no. The rhetoric was quite high, and this is not the language that one should use for the neighbor. But I agree that there was bonhomie between the two countries when Manmohan Singh was the prime minister. And you remember that Khurshid Kasuri claiming that, even Musharraf claimed that, for that matter, that we were close to an agreement, except if lawyers' strike had not happened in Pakistan. He didn't outline the agreement, what the two sides had agreed. But he said that the 5 people were knowing about it in Pakistan. Indian side, we never came to know whether there was an agreement and what was the outline of the agreement. There have been many guesses, but we will not be indulging into those guesses. Yes, we were there, but then 26/11 derailed everything. 26/11 derailed everything, and then the issue became that you penalize the people who are responsible for the 26/11, and the talks went haywire thereafter. And after that, there was a meeting in Sharm el Sheikh also, if you recall. There also,
Yes.
but there the moment Balochistan was included, the problem, the Manmohan Singh could not handle that, and finally he gave up on Pakistan.
Yeah, Sharm el Sheikh was a blunder.
Yeah, Prime Minister Modi started well when he, in the first term, he traveled from Afghanistan to Pakistan, met Nawaz Sharif, and that time it was that again the same bonhomie was seen. But then Pathankot happened, and many attacks, such attacks took place. So till both sides are on board, army and the civilian leadership, it's not possible to have a peace overture from Pakistan easily. The other possibility that Pakistan can talk sense, and the two countries, India and Pakistan, can start talking, or at least resolve all issues, beginning, start to on these talks, is if the Americans pressurize Pakistan that, look, this can't continue. Because that time also, the Americans had ensured through Musharraf that there was no cross-border infiltration. So, and now if there is infiltration taking place, obviously the Americans know about it. It is not that the Americans don't know about it. And remember, not even 2 years back, Pakistan was on the grey list of FATF.
Of FATF, yes.
Yes, Pakistan got released around November 22 or so. Moved from there.
That's right.
So Americans have all the keys on Pakistan. The IMF
that is the FATF is a tool that the Americans could use.
Have used in the past.
Have used, yeah. And probably will use again. Dr. Kumar, you wanted to interject twice, I know, when Mr. Monani was saying something. What did you want to say? Are you going to bring up the 4-point formula? Musharraf's 4-point formula, which went nowhere.
You know, the 4-point formula, so-called, was actually one of the very wise gifts, I would say, that the Manmohan administration gave Musharraf. Because these points had been already discussed in the back channel.
You're saying that Dr. Manmohan Singh's government gave the 4-point formula to Musharraf?
I am saying that that 4-point formula, or the 4 points in that formula, had been discussed at great length in the back channel. Some of them had been put forward by the Indian side. And the framework agreement that was drawn up between Lamba and his Pakistani interlocutor drew on some elements of the 4-point formula, but was a much more detailed framework. And it is actually elaborated upon in Khurshid Kasuri's book. I would also say, by the way, that we at the Delhi Policy Group, who had worked in part in obviously track 2 type ways, but at our level, not with other people. We had produced a framework agreement which was published, and much of which was included, according to what Sati Lamba told me himself, in the white paper that the government of India tabled in the back channel, which is what became the framework agreement between the two sides.
That's very interesting. Now, could you take us through that? Could you take us through the 4 points? Because I only know about 2 points.
Look, so the actual framework agreement was in 2 parts. One part was CBMs, India, Pakistan, and the kinds of relationships that the two could have. You know, things like a free trade movement and family movements and medical and
That's
so
right.
on, and
Yeah.
then working on developing resources, water, for example, other environmental issues, working together. That is to say, working together was the various parts of divided Jammu and Kashmir working together, not with oversight, obviously, from India and Pakistan. That was one part. The other part was autonomy for every part of the former princely states, equal
Didn't it also
autonomy.
include a recognition of the line of control as the boundary?
It was that the line of control, that you would work towards the recognition of the line of control as a boundary. What it was, though, was, so there was a tacit acceptance, if you like, that Pakistani occupied Kashmir would have autonomy within the Pakistan framework, as would Gilgit-Baltistan, which is often not included, but was included in this framework. And the autonomy would be based substantively on what was already given to Jammu and Kashmir in India. That was the element. Now, in order for this framework to kick in, the first step would have to be the demilitarization of the terrorist or militant groups, whatever terminology that you want to use, that they would have to then demobilize, you know, themselves, enter some kind of disarmament and reintegration type process on their own, but that had to be the foundation for the rest to kick in.
That's right. That's very interesting. You know,
So
that last point. Sorry?
That violence had to come to an end. That
Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
the first.
No,
The
that
first
point,
basis.
in fact, Mr.
The
Mohanani,
second
if I
point,
could come back. Sorry?
the second point I wanted to make in
Yeah.
relation to what Mr. Mohanani said was that I thought one of the most important steps that the Manmohan government took after our 2611 was to actually put a really concerted, pitched and active case for FATF to take the steps that it did against Pakistan. If you recall, China opposed many, many times.
That's right.
But the Manmohan government engaged in a diplomacy which got all the other members of FATF on board, of course, to some extent in partnership with the US. But FATF was the most successful instrument against support and backing for terrorism in Pakistan thus far. Much more so than a surgical strike here or there, which was not very surgical and not much of a strike.
And yet, you know, Imran Khan, when he was Prime Minister, was the first person to acknowledge openly that the Pakistan army had created the terrorist groups in the past. And he said he was determined to disband them. So, Mr. Mohanani, do you think that now, with this uptick in terror in Jammu, are we seeing the return of these terrorist groups, I mean, created by Pakistan? I mean, this proxy war has continued for the last God knows how many years. So, you know, and there was one thing I wanted to say when you said this about the jihadists, you know, infiltration. They have always felt that India would not retaliate because, you know, I mean, that the fact is that Pakistan and India are both nuclear powers, and therefore, you know, India would never do anything, never go to war until, of course, as you said, this. You know, the cross-border strike happened, but they did hit the Jaish-e-Mohammed headquarters in Balakot. So, you know, successful, not successful. What do you have to say about the return of these jihadis?
Look, this
and you know Masood Azhar, who's apparently being held in custody.
Yeah. Look, this is no return of jihadis. The jihadis are always, the cannon fodder is available in Pakistan anytime. So if you ask Hafiz Muhammad Saeed or Masood Azhar or any other group that can you have 15, 20 boys ready, 30 boys ready? They can do it in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. The boys are ready. Weapons are there. It's a matter of facilitating their infiltration into India. That Pakistan army can organize it. But that doesn't mean that the kind of situation that we witnessed in the 90s in Pakistan, when I was also posted there, and I would see in the shops, there will be donation boxes kept, Jihad Fund, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Jihad Fund, Lashkar-e-Taiba, and people will
My
donate
gosh.
money. I have seen 2,000 rupees notes stuffed in those boxes, transparent plastic boxes. So it's not that the people were not paying money. People were paying money. So that kind of things are not going to happen. The open movement in cars, open movement in jeeps, that is not going to happen. But if Pakistan wants, anytime the escalation can take place at a short notice. But I'm again saying that this escalation doesn't mean, this violence doesn't mean that there is an escalation. Now, if nothing happens for 3 months, again the same story will go on. That's all quiet, it is all quiet, it is all quiet. And as far as our retaliation is concerned, we didn't retaliate when Poonch and Rajouri attacks took place.
That's right, we didn't.
We didn't react. So our reaction also depends on the international climate in the region. How the international players are placed, how the Americans are placed, how Mohammed bin Salman is placed, how Mohammed bin Zayed is placed. And all these calculations have to be taken into account before we can do any adventurous attack or we indulge in this. It's not going to be that easy if we think that attack took place today and we can retaliate. It's not going to be that easy. Only when all the parameters are fulfilled, all the powers in the region are on our side, only then we can think of doing something. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
So there's also a lot of chatter on how Pakistan's military sees the revocation of Kashmir's autonomy as a defeat, and that the Prime Minister Modi, now that all of this is happening and poll results weren't exactly the way the BJP wanted it, will put assembly elections on hold, and also plans to to restore J&K statehood. And that everything will now depend on whether the Amarnath Yatra will be able to go through. I mean, Article 35A, I believe, is one of the concessions that General Bajwa is supposed to have asked for. He asked for a review and said, put it back because, and frankly, even in all this time, the investment in Kashmir hasn't actually gone up. Nobody has bought investment money in that state as they had expected it to happen. So, what do you see happening? I mean, vis-a-vis elections and statehood? Because Farooq Abdullah has given a statement just yesterday, I think it was, where he very clearly said that they should have a representative, a real clear representative, governing them in Kashmir and not a governor who's imposed from the top. Even though Omar Abdullah, of course, his son said that he's not going to contest after he lost Baramulla.
Yes.
To Engineer Rashid.
Yeah. Look, first we have to set our house in order. For setting our house in order, we have to take people of Jammu and Kashmir along with us. So if we somehow assuage the feelings there, we talk to the people, we, as you rightly said, we restore the statehood, and obviously we have to hold elections. Otherwise, I agree that the people are not happy with the governor's administration, not at all. They want their own representative to be there so that they can at least talk with those people in the same language. in which they can converse. So it is the utmost need that we hold elections in J&K. Restoration of democratic process can't be held hostage to attack in Reasi or attack in this place. Not at all. But what I also pointed out in my last article, that the perils of sentimentalism overriding everything else can be counterproductive and can cause problems. So if we want to bring down the sentimentalism, its first thing is to have a soft handling of the issue. Let the statehood be restored of J&K, so that at least people say that there is a country that cares for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. There is a country that recognizes that Jammu and Kashmir people have been wronged by downgrading their status from state to a union territory. It is
Should
not.
this also include Ladakh, Mr. Maulani?
I would, if I felt, if I am to do that, yes, I would include Ladakh also and make it as a old united Jammu and Kashmir. But if it is okay, if people of Ladakh wanted a UT status, but at least give Ladakh people also statehood. They are also agitating. It's not easy for so many people to sit for 21 days dharna in sub-zero temperatures. It's not that easy. Let me see how many BJP people do it. Nobody will do it. So that shows the pain and anger and frustration that is there in Ladakh. So let us, they're our own people. So why make them agitate? Let them also be part of what is big industry is going to come in Ladakh. Let the people have their security of jobs, security of their land, security of their language, culture, everything. So restoring statehood is not something that we are doing as a favor to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, as also the Ladakh. It is
Dr. Kumar,
right,
if I can,
absolutely their right.
Yeah, Dr. Kumar, if I can, we can go back to China. So the China impact, a Pakistani analyst did say to me yesterday, if you do a Chabahar, we will do a Kashmir. Do you think there's any connection? Pakistan is a China proxy in many ways, and Pakistan's economy is flailing. Surely they can't afford to risk another long-drawn conflict over Kashmir. It would damage all hopes it has of securing investment from the UAE, which wants to handle its airports, normalize its foreign exchange reserves. Do you think that the Pakistan army has actually thought this through?
I think before we get to that, first of all, let me say that I find it absolutely astonishing that people can talk so freely about, oh, well, postpone elections. You have a Supreme Court order, for God's sake. Please take it seriously and pay some respect to our institutions as well as to the public sentiment. And the second thing is, I don't think that you have a right to call yourself a democracy if you deny democracy to a key part of your country. And that is just that. So please get a bit serious on all of this. Secondly, as far as security is concerned, there is absolutely no doubt that your best security is the support of the people of the region. They are the ones who always sound the alarm for a start.
Yeah.
It's not your other people who, sad to say, sound the alarm. It's not from the central agencies that you hear it. You almost always get the tip-off from a local person. So obviously, you have to build those bridges and those securities at the ground level up. And that is going to also be the only way that you are going to catch infiltrators, which, thinking that you throw a few missiles somewhere is not going to solve your security problem. It's a very lazy attitude to have. You have to solve it by catching the people as they come in, by having people on the ground who will immediately tell you that here are these infiltrators. So it goes right back to that you've got to have the trust of the people on the ground. Otherwise, you're never going to get anywhere on any of these things. Now, when it comes to Pakistan, I would say that, look, let's be realistic. We know that in the valley, there is huge disaffection, perhaps alienation from India is as great as it was in the early 1990s. Now, if that is the case, we do also know that democratization, which will be inevitable once you have an elected assembly, let me not say will, there's a high probability that you will have violent incidents. How are you going to tackle them? One way to tackle them is to have the cover of some type of talks with Pakistani leaders. That has always been something that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have said, is that if it can be resolved with Pakistan, it's going to be a lot easier for us as Indians. And that's something that you've got to bear in mind, that even just a cover of that, knowing that it may not go very far, is going to garner you a great deal of support in the valley. So keep that in mind. If you want local support, yes, you have to have elections. Yes, you need to restore statehood. But one of the greatest dividends in terms of local support, as Mufti Muhammad Saeed found out, is that if you have something like a peace process going, whether it's restoration of trade, whether it's talks on security, you can pick which issue you want. You can do it whichever way you want, but that is going to help you a great deal in preventing militancy from growing in the valley. That is, after all, should be one of our first objectives.
In fact, while I was
As
talking
to China,
China, sorry. Yeah.
now, as to China, China obviously makes hay when there are tensions between India and Pakistan. But I don't think that they would try to instigate. I don't think they would actively instigate and foment. And I would say one point that perhaps our Prime Minister should raise with the Chinese leadership, who I hope he'll be meeting at the SCO meeting, is this whole question of the
In Astana.
flow of how are the 16s getting into the hands of terrorists, Chinese made? That is a question that has to be raised. We have to ask that what is your end user regulation process? Are you going to raise this with Pakistan? That how are these guns that you have sold to Pakistan getting into the hands of terrorists?
Yeah, that's a good point. Mr. Monani, if I could just come back to you, could there be a spillover, you think, to Punjab? Whether, Khalistani separatist Amritpal Singh has won the Kathua seat with a massive margin, 190,000 votes plus. And the Prime Minister is going to face some questions by the world media, and both by the US and Canadian leader Justin Trudeau at this G7 about Indian operators, targeting and eliminating Sikh separatists, and also, I believe, jihadi leaders in Pakistan. Do you think that would be something that will happen?
I'm sure it will happen in some form or the other. Maybe the leaders may not directly talk about it, but their national security advisor, Jack Sullivan, US National Security Advisor Jack Sullivan is likely to visit soon and have talks, because there was a high-level inquiry set up, and nobody knows, at least we don't know what happened in that inquiry. So the Americans are tracking it. There were elections, so everything got delayed. But Americans are still on the issue of attempted assassination of Pannu, and yes, they still are working on that. As far as the Amritpal Singh issue is considered, look, this is a long story, because there are several question marks on who Amritpal is. It gets first related to, because he took over the same organization which was earlier headed by Deep Sidhu. And the questions, there are several questions about Deep Sidhu. How did he reach Red Fort? How did he manage to stay there? How did the national media give coverage to it? So it's not an easy answer. It requires a full debate that why this sudden pro-Khalistan sentiment in Khadur Sahib. There is no Khalistan sentiment in Punjab at all. But there is some sentiment which is related to Sikh identity, farmers' agitation, and other issues. How the farmers' agitation was handled, what the TV studios said in Noida and Mumbai. Yeah, look, the Khalistan sentiment is not there. There is no demand for Khalistan in Punjab. Punjab is as peaceful as it was. But the way a narrative has been created through the electronic and print media, that the farmers, even prime ministers called them Andolan Jivis. The TV studio, every day there was a discussion of Khalistanis are there, Khalistanis are there, Khalistanis are. People, they were farmers demanding their revocation of those three laws. And the violence now you see here and there, sometimes targeting the Sikh community, calling them Khalistanis. This is not going to help. And this raises an anger in Punjab. And that anger you saw in the victory of Amritpal. There is no Khalistan.
That's right.
Amritpal Singh
That's
and
right.
even Mohinder
That's a
Singh.
good point.
Mohinder,
That's a good point.
This is like, I told you that there is a sentiment against India in Kashmir. Sheikh Rashid got that vote converted into votes. So there is a sentiment against center for dealing with the farmers' agitation and treating the farmers as Khalistanis, etc., or generating a narrative through the TV and other media. So that is not going down well in Punjab, and there is an anger over that issue. And that anger got converted into votes for Amritpal. Otherwise, Amritpal Singh has dubious credentials.
So finally, if we can just sum up, what do you think should be India's moves right now? What should it do on tackling this insurgency which has cropped up in Jammu?
In Jammu, the response should be very measured and very easy. Let us look earlier also, as I told you, that ultimately, the international community helped us. The turning point in Jammu and Kashmir was not the deployment of our more forces, etc. It was 9/11. 9/11 changed the narrative. And the Americans, 9/11 changed the narrative, and then Pakistan found itself at the other end. 9/11 happened only 2 months after the Musharraf's Agra visit. And you saw how Musharraf behaved in the Agra summit. How the Indian editors were taken for a ride. Breakfast meeting.
Yes, I was there.
You were there. So that is what my point is, that without the international support, we can't deal with Pakistan easily. So for that, we require the support of, obviously, the Americans, and who have some influence on Pakistan. We discussed FATF. Then we have Saudi Arabia, we have UAE. At least these are the friendly countries with whom we can talk on the terrorism.
So we can knock on these doors.
Rather than unilaterally taking some action, it's better to talk to them. China is a dicey country in this regard. It's very difficult to fathom what they are doing it openly and behind the scene. So let us leave aside China for now. But at least these three countries we can talk, and all these three countries have significant influence on the policy making of Pakistan.
Thank you very much. And basically, we need to reach out to our international interlocutors. Yeah, that's a good point. Finally, as I've said before, as with Bajwa's opening up of Kartarpur, which brought a lot of goodwill, India could try a similar gesture. I mean, not opening the Wagha-Atari border, or maybe reopening our embassies or signing the free trade agreement, but maybe a pull aside at Astana at the SCO summit. Shehbaz Sharif is not going, but there will be a Pakistan representative there. Should we go for something small and dramatic, but as inviting Nawaz Sharif, let's say, who's always wanted to visit Ajmer Sharif,
Yes.
and not make it an official meeting, but a goodwill visit, you know? So we'll have to wait and see whether our Western Front goes south or whether we can actually make it
No, I
work
agree.
for us this
Yeah,
time.
I agree with you that even if we don't invite Shahbaz for that matter, because he's a prime minister, naturally a lot of formalities are required. But Nawaz Sharif is not holding any government position as of now.
Exactly.
So he can be invited and his visit can be organized in India. There is absolutely no problem in that. And if that can generate some goodwill, then obviously we can move a step forward. And that step should come from Pakistan side, because Pakistan had withdrawn the High Commissioner.
Indian embassy.
Now,
Yes, that's
now
right.
it's time for Pakistan to restore the old relationship and strengthen the embassies, high commissions on both sides.
Thank you very much, Mr. Monani. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Nina.
And,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thanks.
and thank you, Dr. Radha Kumar, for coming on the show as well. Thanks very much. Thank you, viewers, for watching Global Express on the New Indian Express web edition. Please click and share.